All right, thank you very much. Okay. I'm on the completely wrong. There we go. Okay. All right. So thank you very much for stopping by our fireside chat. So this time we have Will Burton, a senior engineer at Blizzard. Will, if you want to start by just giving like a brief little intro to yourself.
So I've been in video games for a little over 12 years. I've worked on some Bethesda titles, and I've worked on some Blizzard titles. I've been an automation engineer, I've been a QA engineer, I've been a tools engineer, and I'm currently an SDET. Um, I would say though, like title wise, I mean it's SDET, but like the way we've decided to handle our group is pretty unique. In that the way we decide to tackle things is we meet with whether it's a specific game or whether it's a specific group within a game, we meet with them and kind of find out what their problems they're trying to solve with technology, and then we build solutions based on that. So it's kind of a unique approach, but we found that it ends up things that might be just a little too much for that team or more than what they want. Whereas
Yeah.
this, we can tailor the tech to exactly what the problems they're trying to solve. So,
I like how you jumped in for your intro and it's like, how many of Samara's like planned questions can I just answer within this like 2 minute spiel? And just like completely derail his plans for this interview. Thank you.
no problem.
So, actually, yeah, since we can just go right into it. So you mentioned that, like, you've had these different jobs in, like, QA engineer, automation engineer, and you're sort of in that just sort of like support engineering spectrum. So I know that everyone might not sort of know like what a support engineer does and how that's different from like let's just say like a gameplay programmer. Do you think you could give us some like general idea of like how those jobs differ, or how those other sort of like I guess game development engineers how their job is different from yours?
Sure. So a lot of it comes down to the focus. I love to say like actually I was having this conversation with somebody else who's been in engineering and games for a very long time as well, and we were kind of having this discussion about when we both started. There were a lot of generalists. Don't worry, this is getting to a point. There were a lot of generalists when we first started. Like when you hired a programmer, you just hired a programmer. It wasn't really specific to like, oh, this is graphics, oh, this is tools, oh, this is audio, oh, this is gameplay. Like it was much more like you hired more generalists. And what started happening is things started becoming more and more specialized. So things had to become more and more focused in terms of what that programmer did, right? So when you start to talk about, okay, well, what does a graphics programmer do? Well, it focuses on graphics, right? It focuses on specifically like things that would be like rendering in the engine, things like that. So it involves a lot of linear algebra when it's in a 3D space, for example. So like you have to really narrow your focus on just those things. So you have to write code that allows engineers to come in and only focus on what they need to focus on, which means you have to be very specific in the way you design engines or the way you decide to structure work, right? Because you can't have somebody come in and be like, well, I'll do a little bit of gameplay for this task and I'll do a little bit of graphics for this task. It doesn't work that way anymore.
Right.
Um, so you have to really like focus on what it is that person does. And so in terms of like a lot of the game dev team, they have very narrow focus, right? As opposed to what they're doing. Whereas a lot of the support engineering, it can be all over the place. A lot of times you're not sure where you're going to end up going. Um, so I consider I consider myself more of a generalist than most, because I was hired initially as a generalist, and I've had all these different titles. I don't think I'm really specific to one thing. I think
Right.
I'm a lot of things, and I think that's really important in terms of support because the more of a generalist you are when you're in the support spectrum, the more you can actually help out with, right? You're kind of like that sixth man off the bench. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. 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 I like that. That's a great answer. That's a good way of thinking about it. So I guess the follow up to that. So let's say your sort of day to day workspace. So like let's say the gameplay programmer, like they're generally sort of working on like, their day to day is like cool. Like what are these next features we want to implement? Like what's our next milestone? What is your sort of like day to day or like week to week look like as a support engineer?
Ooh, it varies so much for me personally. Um, yeah, wow. I really wish there was okay, so like overall as a whole, it is kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where we meet with the team, whether it's a game team or whether it's like say like the the art team or the QA team, whatever team it is, or sometimes it is like a more general sense of like we're going to meet with this game team. But whatever the scope might be, we meet with them,
Okay.
and we kind of just have this like talk where, because what we're trying to understand is what you're trying to solve with technology, not what you want. Because a lot of times teams will tell you we need this and we need this and we need this, and that ends up not being at all what they need. Like it's like when you go to the doctor and he's trying to diagnose you based on your symptoms. A lot of people in video games tend to tell you what their diagnosis is instead of telling you what their symptoms are. And so by us being able to pull out those symptoms, we're able to like start a plan. And then my day to day is usually going through that plan and filling out the tech that they need to actually solve the problem.
Interesting. So actually, this leads the question because I know you're mentioning like so you meet with like one team and then another. How much like autonomy do you all have as the support engineers? Like, is it like you and the other support engineers saying like let's just say what the QA is asking for is most important right now, and like let's say whatever the art team asks for, that's gonna wait until after we finish. Like, how does that prioritization happen?
That is a great question. Fortunately, we have a PM. And,
Okay.
and I love to call our PM our tank because there's a lot of interest coming at us, and it's like, well, we can't do everything all at once.
Right.
So everything gets filtered through the PM in terms of priority, in terms of work. We even meet with our PM on a weekly basis and kind of story point stuff that's queued up for us in the backlog.
Right.
So we get a better sense of like, oh, what is more important right now, and things get moved around. Like that's just the nature of like anything, right?
Yeah.
Things just get moved around here and there. So what wasn't a high priority last week might suddenly become a high priority this week, that sort of thing. But yeah, thank goodness for our PM because like uh I bounce around probably more than most engineers there, honestly.
Okay.
Um, and that's just because there's not a lot of senior two stats, and they just sometimes need my help on other teams.
Okay. Actually, how often are you like? How often is other part of you bouncing versus like other people?
So uh, it varies. So like I just spent 2 months on Overwatch not too long ago.
Yeah.
And then I might have to go help out both Hearthstone and what is it? Rumble, Warcraft Rumble. I might have to go help out both of those pretty soon. It just for me it just varies substantially because like I could have like 3 months where I'm focused on World of Warcraft or 2 weeks where I'm focused on XYZ. It really does vary for me a lot.
Okay. Whereas, like, let's say the other like QA engineers, they spend like, or the other support engineers, they spend like way more time consistently on like one project.
Yeah, most aspects are specific to one project. That's correct.
Okay. Interesting. And then, okay, and then unless there's some like major reorganization, they're just that's what they're assigned to.
Right, right. And it's just due to scarcity, honestly. Like that's the only reason.
Okay. Interesting. What was one of the other things I was gonna ask you? All right. So I know generally there's like your longer term projects. Like let's just say, all right, there's this thing the QA team needs, but then in addition to that, there's like I'm sure there's always like like one-off support requests. So
Oh
how
yeah.
actually does your team sort of like manage that? I'm assuming it's like those items are just going to you if you're the one at debt. How is that like juggling between those like one-off support requests and then like larger projects? How does that happen?
A lot of times those are still marked a priority via PM. So luckily for me, I don't have to worry about like unless somebody's like, no, this is a fire right now, then my PM is gonna like decide to send that to me or not send it to me. Like just today, I had something, I got pulled from one thing I was working on all week
Yeah.
to something completely different today. And luckily, I was able to handle it all of today.
Okay.
But like you never know. Like it's just whatever ends up being priority like that, I will get contacted and I will get pulled off of stuff.
Okay.
Just how it is.
Oh yeah, no, 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 absolutely. But it's just like it's interesting to see is that like how much is like on you to decide versus someone else. But it really does sound like like the PM, like you've got that sort of support engineering PM, and that's like their whole responsibility is
Yeah, that
just
is. It
managing that
really
juggling.
is.
Okay.
And I love it. I know some engineers don't like that, but I personally love it because there's just too much. My backlog
Yeah.
is ridiculous, and so like it's just too much for me to try and like manage that and do work, right? So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just imagining like you like that you can focus on doing the work and not arguing with people about whose work is going to be done first or second.
bingo.
Sounds like that's what you're really excited about. I think I know Will. I think I know he really likes his PM. The moment that PM tells you they're retiring, you're gonna be like, you can't do that. You have to do that."
How much more money can we offer you?
That's great. Um, so let's say there are some engineers who are sort of trying to figure out where they want to go with their career. Um, and like, let's say they were considering like trying to decide between like graphics engineer, support engineer, and like what would you tell them to sort of maybe like help them decide on like maybe if support engineer is what they want to do?
I would say think about what kind of code do you actually enjoy writing if you're an engineer, right? Because we all have preferences, right? And if you're not heavy into the linear algebra code, maybe not so much graphics, right? Like I really think like that should be like what you enjoy writing should be like the key. Unless you actually want to be more of a generalist like me, then yeah, maybe start looking into support. But if there's like specifically like code you want to focus on and you want to write more of, like you're like writing like A-star algorithms or something, then maybe you want to be gameplay. You know, it's very like much since there's so many things you can focus on and drive into. Like I know a guy who absolutely loves writing audio stuff, so like audio programmer, it's a no-brainer for him, right?
Yeah.
But like I would definitely dig into like what you've enjoyed writing, um, try and play with other things to see if like oh no that's definitely not for me or wow that was really interesting and fun. My personal thing is I like solving problems. I have a math degree. I just really like solving problems. I've always been that way. Like even as a little kid, I just really like solving problems. So I think that's why I became more of a generalist because I was always looking for the next problem to solve more
Right.
so than I was really specific to some type of code.
Interesting. Were you always as much of a generalist like at all your other jobs, like even at Bethesda?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And before I was at Bethesda, I was different other places like Ford and IBM, and I was still very much a generalist there too. Um, but it's just kind of always been like I'll get in where I can fit in. Because
Okay.
you got to remember, so the specificity that we have now has not always been around, right?
Right.
I mean, look at the obviously this is I'm bringing fiction into this, but the fiction has a root in our history itself. Look at it in figures, right? But they weren't like, oh, you need to specify on this type of programming. It was like, no, how do you program this machine?
Yeah. It's just like either the ship's going to the moon or it's not. Like,
Right, right. But
and if
yeah,
it
that
doesn't,
kind
we
of
spend a lot of money and we have a problem.
yeah, like programmers were quote unquote generalists originally, right? Like the specificity came later. And I think a lot of people forget that, honestly. Like, they're like, there's always been graphics programmers. Well, no, there hasn't always been graphics programmers. There's always been programmers, and most of
Yeah.
those were mathematicians. So,
Yeah. I mean, I was like, there wasn't always graphics. So
yeah.
so the idea that there were always graphics programmers, I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, the computer literally just used to say 0 and 1. Like, what do you? We didn't have pictures for a while, my dude. What do you mean?
Yeah, the evolution of that alone is like a great topic because you look at how it just went from like, I'm going to describe this with words to I'm going to draw zeros and ones and lines and it's going to make a picture to, oh, maybe I can actually color the blocks.
Yeah, yeah. Just like how much that has changed over time is fascinating. Just think, what's something else? 'Cause I probably yeah, I feel like you just like blew through these questions, and I'm like, man, I should have wrote more questions. He's just like blasting through these.
I'm sorry.
Uh, no, 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 you're good, you're good. It's just kind of like, oh, damn. Usually there's enough questions, but I was like, oh, what do we talk about now? Oh, actually, here's a good one. So, because there's like, how large have most of the like companies you've been at?
I think I think Ford IBM is probably the largest I've been at, but I guess technically now I'm at Microsoft, right?
Yeah. Okay. So you've okay. So you've always been at companies that are large enough to sort of support that scale of that like real like division of labor between all these different engineers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've oh no, that's not true. I did work at a very small company very briefly. Um I think there was a total of 10 people there. And four of them were field engineers, meaning they would send them out and embed them with different companies. And then two of them two or three of them were on site. I mean, they always stayed there, and then there was some support staff, and that was like the entire company. So that was interesting. I definitely learned a lot. I was a build engineer there.
Jesus, done a lot with support engineering. So actually, that leads to a good question. So let's say that someone is actually starting a game company, and like let's say they start with like that initial, like let's say okay, they started with like that three people, just like cool, like artist, programmer, and then like, and then as they're scaling up, at what point do you think someone needs to consider investing in just having like a specified, just like support engineer?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would just say, ooh. So it, I think the first thing I would determine is how we're going to go about committing our infrastructure. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say we're going to write everything from scratch. That's going to be completely different in the decision making process of when to bring in support versus you decided you're going to start with like a big engine like Unreal or like Unity or something, right? Because if
Yeah,
you're designing it yourself from scratch, you're probably not going to even want support to come in and touch that until you've established some type of baseline or vertical. Whereas if you've got something like Unity or something like that, then you might want to start bringing in support almost right away to start adding features to the engine so that you can actually use those in development. Sort of like a tools programmer. Does that make sense?
okay. Yeah, no, it does. That like yeah, okay, so like your tools engineer will be your support engineer
Yeah.
because there'll be that one person who just focuses on like expanding the like sort of like I guess for Leverboard like a vanilla flavor of the engine to be like the things that are specific for our project.
100%. Yep.
Interesting. I like that.
And then like the gameplay programmer is just focusing on cool. Like now that like I have that person who's just helping me focus on like expanding the things that are in the game, I can just focus on like implementing the things.
Yeah. A perfect example of this is oh dang, I can't say the name of the game. Redacted. They brought in the tools programmer to help do the level design, right? Uh, the level editor. Sorry, they brought in the tools programmer to help do the level editor, and that took so much pressure off of the gameplay programmer that everything else was able to move much faster in terms of schedule.
Okay. I was like, do you have any examples from like your previous projects that are like totally shipped and like because I know you spent a lot of time. You
So
worked on like Elder
it,
Scrolls.
it's such a tiptoe kind of thing, even
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
still. I'm just gonna say no comment.
Yeah, no, no, no. That's fine. That's fine. Obviously, we're not trying to push anyone to like violate NDAs here.
Yeah, yeah. That is one
Uh,
unfortunate thing about being a support engineer is it's not like you can just pull out a portfolio or something and be like, ta-da.
right. Yeah, that's because you're always working on these back end things that are like not easily demonstrated.
Yeah,
It's not. I mean, technically, you supported that game that shipped, but it's not like you can point to like I made this feature that's in there and like everyone's interacting with.
right, exactly.
Which let's see. Actually, so I guess one actually let's go to yeah, I think Jonathan's got some good questions. So do you think you have a skill an area that you specialize in or prefer like any of all your like things that you've like dabbled in terms of programming?
Yeah, I would say I do have one specialty, and that's only because of my math degree. It's linear algebra. I have fixed people's math libraries. I've written unit tests for people's math libraries. I've gone in and fixed literal math that they had running in the game. And like I won't say what game, but there was a game I was working on, and people were just randomly adding 180 degrees here and there because then it quote unquote worked, and it turned out the root equation was actually just incorrect, and that's why people were just randomly adding 180 degrees for it to work. So stuff like that.
Oh,
Like I'm really good at that just because I have a math degree with the linear algebra specialty, so that that just works for me.
has anyone tried to fix your unit test?
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell that story.
Yeah. Okay. If any of you meet Will in person, Will lives in Irvine, California, so hopefully you can catch him at like BlizzCon or GDC. You can ask him in person about people trying to like fix his unit tests, and he can tell you fun stories that will not be recorded.
Yes. Let's just put it this way: people without math degrees have to try. They could correct my math. I'll leave it at that.
um, let's see. Actually, we got another question from Johnny. What was the hardest challenge that you think you've solved for a game you've worked on? Anything that kept you up for a few nights?
Yes. Oh man. So this was when I was working on Elder Scrolls Online, and we were trying to come up with a way to fix how the game was being packaged because it was just taking literal way too long. It was just taking way too long to package every day.
Like you mean just
Um,
like just literally just pushing new builds?
yeah. Well, no, specifically packaging the builds for deployment, right?
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a complicated process for a million reasons when you work on a live game like that.
Right.
Um, and I spent months trying to come up with a way to try and do it so we didn't have to do it from scratch every time. We could just only build the differences and leave everything else alone. And that was like a really difficult thing to figure out. It required, honestly, I think the problem was just because it required a whole lot of refactoring just to get it to the point where I could even start thinking about solving the problem that way. And so like it really, really, and there's so many types in the game and so many different items and assets. It was just like, man, this is a huge problem, and you had to like really cut it out into like smaller pieces. However, you could find a way to cut it out into smaller pieces, because trying to solve it all at once was just never gonna happen. It was just one of those problems. So you had to
Right.
like divide the problem and then divide the problem again and then divide the problem again to finally come up with a solution from the smaller pieces and work my way back up to the main problem. So
Because you,
that was tricky.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, it's okay. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna refactor all of this, and then it's like, cool, I'm gonna fix all 500 of these merge conflicts, and then you fix them all. It's like, cool, there's now 500 new merge conflicts, and it's like, well, all right, we need a new plan, guys.
Yeah, it was difficult to say the least. It was very difficult, but it was a problem and I got to solve it. So
There you go. You are. It sounds stressful, John. It is, yeah, I mean, yes, challenging, but also stressful. It sounds like a
yeah.
job I don't want. I'm just like, nah. Somebody call Will. I'm not built for this. There's got to be
Yeah.
something heavy we can lift. I'll take care of that.
Yeah, something else I had to solve. It was really fun. Is in WoW there was this feature called Turgas. I don't know if anybody plays, but essentially it's when you go into the Turgas tower, all of the levels are randomly generated.
Okay.
And so like yeah, the level layout and the enemies are all just randomly generated when you go in, and QA needed a way to test that.
Oh dear, yeah. Because if it's yeah, how do they oh yeah. Wait, so did you have to build a tool to sort of like control the randomness?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I had to build it in game because it wasn't going to work with me making an addition or an add-on or like a desktop thing. So I figured out a way to narrow down how what it could cycle through. And then I figured out a way to like, okay, now that I know it can only cycle through these many enemy types, I figured out a way to set it bound wise so that it would give you this enemy type in this layout when you checked a bunch of checkboxes in game in the in-game tool. So they could literally like get a bug from a specific layout and specific enemies, and then they could actually go back in game and recreate it.
I might need to talk to you about how to do that sometime in like 2025 once I've got, my core game done and my procedural generation working and I need to start testing my procedural generated levels.
Oh, okay.
I might start to you
I have some experience with that.
like, hey, help. I was like, all right, cool. If no one else gets anything from this talk, I realized, oh, that's a problem I'm gonna have to solve next year. Oh dear.
They make me name it. They make me name the tool, and that's always bad. Never let me name a tool. I warned them too, like, don't let me name the tool. But they let me name
And
the tool.
what'd you
Like I
name it?
said, it was called Turgas. So what did I call the tool?
Wait,
Tour
what?
guide.
Oh, tour guide. Oh, okay. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you do love going to theme parks, so yeah, that fits.
Yeah, just
I
never let me name tools. I warned people, don't let me name tools, and then they let me do it anyway. So okay.
I mean, we had someone in my job IT who was naming our computers from like Naruto characters, and somebody was like, "Wait a minute, what the hell is Shoji? What is this?" So
I
trust
got
me, it's fine.
I've named a tool Derp.
You know what? I was trying to support you, and like, you're not really helping your case here, sir. You're
I know. You should not let me name tools. Oh, Derp actually helped search through any of the changes that came in development for the games. You could it was almost a search engine for the changes in the game.
What you like as opposed so that makes sense because you're searching for features as opposed to just like searching like for like GitHub commits.
Yes, because we're not just talking about code changes. We're talking about asset changes, right? We're talking about gameplay changes, right? We're talking about data changes, right? So it covered all of that. So you could search all of that. It didn't matter what kind of changes it was. It was all in one spot, and you could search through them. Producers loved it.
That is fascinating.
We even kept track of who did what changes. So you could like go through a history of changes from a certain person or a certain asset or whatever it was.
So you implemented Git blame into your tool. I mean,
Something
it
like
sounds like
that.
something exactly like that. So if somebody is like, "Yo, this design isn't fun. Who did this?" That's
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, Johnny. Nah, Johnny levels are always the worst. I knew it."
Well, so if a build broke, right, and you could see where it broke, right, like it's more than just the code that might have broken it, right? It could have been an asset that broke it, right? It could have
Right.
been some incorrect data that broke it, right? Like you can go through and just go, oh, here's the breakage. Let me trace back the changes. Oh, there you go. There's your Git blame.
That is really cool.
I guess I'd say, just in terms of like, in all the time that you've spent as a support engineer, what would you say is like the most important lesson you've learned as
Ooh.
like and like the what it takes to like be a successful support engineer?
Um, I, I think probably for me, and this is specifically because of the way that I do things, and I understand that this is not an industry standard, but for me, building up my diagnostic skills, um, not just in terms of code, but also in terms of process, in terms of workflow, to really take symptoms and really figure out what is actually the problem, um, has been absolutely invaluable. I don't think we would have gotten the autonomy we've gotten to hop around and do all the things. I don't think we would have been told, oh, okay, they're just gonna fix the problem. We're not gonna worry about it, right? Like without having those skills, being able to clearly like go, oh, here's the problem, and then clearly explain why this is the problem, and that's why you're having these symptoms, and here's how exactly we're gonna fix it. Like doing things that way made things so much clearer and so much easier for literally everybody involved, that I can't see going back to doing it any other way anymore.
I guess in terms of like let's say moving forward, is there anything that you'd really like to see like change or improve with like let's say how Blizzard handles support engineering or how like other people handle support engineering? Like maybe you'd think like more people should try and tackle it the way we're doing it at Blizzard.
I think the key, and I'm a big proponent of this. I literally go out of my way to do this. I honestly think the key with a lot of programming, engineering, whatever you want to call it, is knowledge. And I don't believe that just getting a CS degree is enough. I believe that you have to keep exploring and seeing what's out there. And so a lot of the things I do is I'll write up emails to the engineering team of here's like a list of 5 resources on this type of algorithm, and that might be YouTube videos, they might be courses, they might just be articles, whatever it is, and I try to do that on a weekly basis. But in addition to that, I also do these optional learning discussions where I pick a video or some other topic and I say, all right, if you're coming to the next learning discussion, it's going to be about this video or this topic or whatever. Here's the material you should watch or read for this learning discussion. And then we just sit down and we kind of just discuss what's been what the goal of that was, and we kind of like pick it apart a little bit, like because it's one thing to like watch something, but it's another thing to like actually like have an analytical discussion about that thing you just watched to be critical about it, because then I think you gain a much deeper understanding of it, right? It's just continuously trying to gain that knowledge. I think it's extremely important, because a lot of times what I see in especially in support engineering is we did the one thing the one way, and so let's just keep doing it that one way no matter what the actual problem is. In other words, let's just keep using a hammer as a solution for all of our problems, and we all know that doesn't work. But the reason the hammer keeps being used is because no one's ever really trying to expand on what else is out there besides the hammer. That, at least that's what I found in my experience. Like, a lot of times teams won't change is because they're literally just like, well, we know this works, we don't want to deviate, we don't want to try and learn new things, we're just going to stay straight down this path. And a great example of this is I'll see teams that have literally never tried to even write or use services. And I'm like, but why? And then they'll go, well, we don't know them, so we don't use them. And that's literally their reasoning. And it's like, okay, that's not a good enough reason anymore. This is this is 2024. Like, we can't use that as a reason anymore. That's not gonna work. So, like, yeah, just always trying to expand your knowledge, I think, is the biggest thing that I am a huge proponent of. I think everybody should always be trying to expand their knowledge, especially when it comes to engineering, because there's too many great ideas out there. There's too many great ways of solving problems out there, and like, not at least making yourself aware of them is kind of doing yourself a disservice, especially in engineering.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure someone asked me a similar question in IT, and then I was like, "Yeah, change is scary, so I don't want to do it." And they're like, "Ah, it's not really gonna work." And I was like, "All right, fine, I'll try the new thing." I was like, "Okay, since you insist."
Yeah, and like a lot of times, people will take the new concept and they will try and integrate it in their stuff if it makes sense. Right, we're not going to try and take every topic and integrate it. But I've literally seen people come to a learning session, go, "Oh my God, this will solve a problem we have," and they will integrate it into their own stuff. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started to develop that more like later in my career, but I think earlier in my career, I definitely fell into the trap you were saying, where it's just like, "Yo, I know this one thing works." Instead of saying, "Hey, man, I got a problem to solve. I got a ticket to close. This is I don't have the time to be, explore new horizons. I got to get work done."
Yeah, they're trying to find a way to replicate the learning discussion so they can do it company wide right now. Because right now we're only doing it across the STETs, but they want to do it across the whole engineering company. So I'm currently working on curriculums for that. So we will see how that goes.
That's gonna come with a title change, right? Because now you're like a senior at that.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm just helping them with the curriculum, and then somebody else is actually going to do those discussions and stuff.
There you go. I mean, I was like, at that point, you got to get promoted to like Professor Will Burton.
No thanks. I'll, I'll stick to like helping them initially get set up, and then like I have nothing else to do with that.
He's like you tried your hardest to work in the field and avoid academia, and then you became an academic in the field. So, are there any other questions that anyone has for Will? Let me just scroll back through and make sure. Oh, here we go. We're just curious when it comes to crime, work environments, and interest. All right, I'll just read through the whole thing. All right, Mr. Will. Oh man, I forgot that we're like adults and we're not college students anymore. I'm not used to people calling me Mister. I'm always interested and curious when it comes to inquiring about work environments with industry professionals. I'm currently a student at UA in Huntsville and wanted to ask how viable it would be to pursue a cybersecurity role within a game dev production slash publishing company.
That's a good question. So, cybersecurity roles that are in-house are typically AAA and up. You don't see a lot of that outside of AAA. If they do have cybersecurity, it's usually a vendor or something like that. If it's below AAA, so that's something to keep in mind if you wanna do that. But yeah, they definitely exist for sure in the much bigger houses.
Yeah. So I can tell you a little bit of that, Jockus, just because I've talked with some people about it. Like Will said, it's definitely larger companies that do it. Um, you're definitely like looking for companies that like a lot of their games are like doing stuff online. So like for instance, a company, just a random example, like they make one big, single player RPG and then they make their, next big single player RPG. They're less likely to have the kind of job you're looking for. But like let's say a company that's like, yo, cool, like our bread and butter, actually Activision's an easy example. Like their bread and butter is this like large scale online experience. That's the kind of company you're like, or just type of companies you're gonna want to be focusing your search for something like cybersecurity.
Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls Online.
And as opposed to like how cybersecurity differs in terms of like methodology and things you need to like focus on, that I don't know. I would have to look into that to get an answer for you later. But there's definitely an option. Like there's definitely a place for it.
Yep.
Actually, let's see. We got a few more minutes. We got time. Let's see how quickly I can find a cybersecurity job. Let me just see if I type in security and see what I get. We'll stick this to United States. Senior Director, Information Security. Oh, wait, Blizzard has internships for cybersecurity. Hold on.
Did you just use the same link from yesterday?
Hold on. I'm gonna drop this right now. Hold on, give me 1 sec. And are these closed yet?
No.
I don't. Oh, cool. So great. That was actually a fantastic question. All right, cool. So Blizzard employee is now telling us that the internship for security, Blizzard security, I'm sorry, Blizzard internships have not closed yet. Actually, you know what? Well, since you are the actual employee, can you explain this better than me?
Okay, so we have a summer internship, and the applications are open from September through January. So, they might be closed after today. So do it now. Now, um, do I just remembered that. Yeah, it's September through January for our summer internship. So keep that in mind. You might not hear anything for a while because it's a summer internship, but they are global, so you can actually apply worldwide, to be clear. So that's kind of cool. Not a lot of companies let you do that. Um, but yeah, here, I'll just post the generic link in chat as well. Anybody else who might be looking, they can go at it. But so yeah, they what happens is it's just like any other internship though. Like once they pick candidates, they let them know, and there is a pretty decent rate in terms of interns becoming full time, so that is cool.
Um, what was I gonna ask you? Um, do you know if there's any value in applying for like these separate O listings per like location, or if you applied for one, you're in for all of them?
I would recommend not bothering. I would just pick a location, and then
Okay.
during the process, I would let them know that if you're willing to go to other locations, just let the hiring manager, whoever it is, like I am definitely willing to go to other locations. Because applying multiple times isn't going to get you hurt any faster just because you picked a different location.
Yeah. Well, no, I was asking that like because there's some places where it's at like you need to actually go through this process with that other like team.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, cool. All right, so yeah, I'm glad I was asking to get that question answered, and I'm glad it came up. So now, like, cool. Like before that's done, yeah. So those of you who are students, you got some homework to do. Get those last minute applications in.
This probably is by the time this airs, this is probably not going to be valid information. I'm so
Oh
sorry.
no, yeah, actually, yeah, right. By the time this gets uploaded to YouTube, this will no longer be up to date. So let me say that right now. Oh, that's unfortunate. I feel bad.
Yeah.
Right, but the person we were talking to last night, I will DM them and let them know that like they close probably tonight. So that's one extra student that should hopefully that's one extra black student that we can make sure actually gets their internship application in.
Yes. Shout out to our
Any
new president.
yeah, yeah, actually, yeah, President's a Activision Blizzard black woman now.
Yes.
I was just about to ask you how did your like all hands go, and I'm like that is absolutely not a question you can
No.
answer.
Mm-mm.
I'm just like, I don't even know why asking that went through my brain. I don't even know why I considered asking.
No, no, no.
So yeah. So any other questions you might have? I think I saw Jonathan type in, so we'll just wait another minute. Also, yeah, shout out to Drakus because it was really good that you asked because I never would have even thought to like, yo, check those internships. And yeah, now you found out.
That's so funny. We were literally doing that yesterday, and now we're
Yeah,
doing
we
it
just
again today.
we just happened to be talking about like you working for Blizzard and the internship. Then now we're checking again. All right, so if Johnny's good. Gonna wait for Drakus.
So
And yeah,
what's your experience in support engineering been
so
like?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, so we're killing time. So my software makes my company makes software for nonprofits. So initially it was just as a Q engineer, like starting like purely just like manual testing, and then I started spending more and more time working on like automated tests versus what you call it, manual testing. And then I started getting pulled into the team that was like I slowly started drifting more and more in towards the infrastructure side. So like the next area was like, oh cool, now I'm helping with like supporting on the like infrastructure that like supports the automated test. And I'm like, getting some assistance with DevOps for like particular things, and then like I'm sort of owning all of the infrastructure, and now I'm like expanding into like more and more random DevOps things. Like now I'm working on some like AWS like migration stuff, just all types of just so it's like my tools engineering and like support engineering experience is very much focused on like automated testing.
Yeah. How do you like working on the DevOps stuff as an engineer?
Um, it's a very new experience for me, just because of the, I mean, I still very much focused on like the automated testing specifically. That like I haven't really built like tools and stuff like that at all. I'm not sure. I've done a little bit of that with our internal tool. I've done actually. So I guess I've done some tools engineering stuff. I've done a little bit of performance testing, like work engineering stuff. So I've sort of also kind of been this like jack of all trades engineer focused on this jack of all trades engineer focused on automation,
Hmm.
like whatever the automation needs. And a lot of it has just been like it usually started with some random task needed to be done, and someone's like, Samara, this is going to you, and then it's like, I've never heard of this before, and I have no idea what to do, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like a Samara problem, not a me problem, because I'm the one assigning it to you, not the one doing the work. And I was like, all right, here we go, once more into the abyss.
So you've got your big hat and your oversized fireproof clothes, and you're putting out fires. Is that what's going on?
um, I will say like my big change moving into this role, as I'm sort of moving more and more into it, was like learning to shift from like being on a product that has like deliverable milestones where it's like this is the thing that we are giving to the client. This is like when it needs to be done by. So on this sort of like moving over almost like closer to where you are, where like people come to me with their problems, or I try to go to people and figure out like what their problems are and like how I can best solve them.
Okay. Sounds familiar.
So yeah, it's like it's a space where you've been at. So it's like I've slowly drifted closer to that and had to try to like learn that as I go. because it's like for instance, I would talk to like the engineering team, and like none of them are in that sort of space at all because like like the timelines, the who they are like making things for, who they answer to, like their stakeholders for their projects are like totally different from me. So when I'm trying to like figure out a methodology, I'm like, all right, cool. I can't use the methodology of anyone else at this company. So what do I do?
Yeah. I definitely think like a key thing there, specifically there, is definitely perspective, right? Like I had to definitely start looking at things like, if I was this person, what are my goals? What are my concerns? What are my problems, right? And then taking that and then trying to explain back to them with their perspective in mind, feeding back to them like, here's what's really going on and here's how we can approach it. It's been interesting trying to gain that skill of being like, I need to look at things from your perspective and not just trying to solve a problem, because again, I like solving problems.
You're just like, hey man, I built this amazing tool. You're welcome, and then you just run off. What do you mean it doesn't work? My code is amazing. I solved the problem. How could you not be happy?
Right.
Right. So I think that actually about covers it. So I'm gonna say to everyone, thank you very much for coming to our first fireside chat of the year. Will, thanks very much for signing on for this.
Happy to be here.
As always, we will, hop into the chat and chill for our just sort of like side discussions. Um, Prescott, I think you can sign off in terms of